Oh, and greetings, my relatives. Welcome to another program, Eagle and Condor. This is Tony Gonzales, your host today. We have a very special program, a video interview that I did with Dr. Jose Cuellar, aka Dr. Loco. As you might recall, several weeks ago, I interviewed him with a video screening of Alambrista, and in that, it begins with flute playing, with music, with the water trickling down a hill. And that flute instrument that Dr. Cuellar, aka Loco, used was a ceramic. In this case today, we're going to be talking about flutes of the Americas and indeed around the world of wooden flutes, that is. So let's listen in on that, my relatives. But before we do, I just want to remind you that this is also Mexica New Year time in San Jose. Mexica New Year will be March the 15th and through the 17th at the San Jose Park, the Emma Prush Park there in San Jose. So don't forget that, my relatives. And continuing on with that, on March the 15th, Poems for Cesar, that's Poems for Cesar Chavez. That will be at Santa Cruz at Barrios Unidos, and the special guest featured there is Luis Rodriguez, and he'll have poems on and about Cesar Chavez. So tune in on that at Santa Cruz Barrios Unidos, my relatives. And also coming up now, that began Thursday, in Watsonville with Cine and Cultura, and that includes a lowrider show, but that's from the 7th on through the 17th, my relatives. So try to make that in Watsonville at the Cine Green Valley Cinema in Línea. That's in Watsonville. And finally, my relatives, Cesar Chavez's birthday on March 30. That will be celebrated again in Santa Cruz at Barrios Unidos, and at that time, a special guest speaker, Gloria Hernandez, from out in Fresno, the San Joaquin Valley, she'll be there to speak on that occasion. That's Cesar Chavez's birthday, March the 30th. So mark your calendar, all these events, my relatives. All right, let's go into that video interview that I did with Dr. Jose Cuellar about flutes. Oh, my relatives, welcome to another program, Eagle and the Condor. And today I've invited Dr. Jose Cuellar, aka Dr. Loco, the great performer here out of the Bay Area, San Francisco area, to talk to us more definitively, if you will, please, about the flute. Among the many instruments that Dr. Cuellar, Jose Cuellar, performs with. We a lot of times hear publicly on at street movements, ceremonies, and with the flute. And of course, our last conversation with Dr. Cuellar included our talk about the film movie Alambrista and its origins in 2007, and during that period. But Dr. Cuellar was very significant and instrumental, if you will, too, because in the movie, in the documentary itself, he plays the flute, and it has a very profound imagery to it in his playing the flute with water trickling and the soil and the water. But Dr. Cuellar has more to share with us of not only that significance, but the flute itself and the many instruments that he's acquired over the last couple decades. And indeed, he has welcomed us into his home, and we're into the studio, and it's a very profound vision of flutes from different parts of the Americas, which we'll get more into with Dr. Cuellar. But I would say that I can't think of, I certainly have not seen a greater display of flutes of this kind, which includes wood and ceramics, which we can talk about further on. But Dr. Cuellar, with that introduction, of course, many of you know the Professor Dr. Cuellar, from the many college institutions that he's taught as, and a great performer. Dr. Cuellar, if we can continue on with our last discussion and your performance of playing the flute in Alambrista, and now we're in your home, in your studio and display of flutes that you have here. Welcome to the show, please.
Thank you. Well, thank you so much, Tony. Thank you, everyone, all my relations, for supporting this program and for taking the time out to listen to what we may have to say today. This rare opportunity that I have to really talk about these flutes that I've collected over a good number of years. Just looking at this collection here, I could see the evolution not only of the flute and how these instruments came into being and the degree and complexity, but also how I came to them. For example, the very first flute of all of these, the very first one that I acquired in my life was this one. And this is a Tennessee River reed flute. The reed comes from the Tennessee River. And it was 1987 Stanford Powwow. And the artist, salesperson, William Gutierrez, Southern Ute, had all these beautiful flutes there. Some, like the ones that I have here, much more elaborate. And so I asked him, well, how much is that? He said, well, that's $200. How much is that? Oh, that's $400. And I said, wow, do you have anything a little bit more in the bargain range? He said, are you looking for a flute? I said, yes. He goes, oh, it must be over there in that basket, or in that box, that big cardboard box of a bunch of these flutes. He says, yours is in there somewhere. So in essence, he said, try it. So I went there, and I stayed a good part of the afternoon playing every flute. I put it aside, pick up another one, trade. And finally, at the end,
for the one that talks to you, or
and at the end, finally, I said, "This is the one. Of all the ones, this is the one that." So I paid him for it, very modest sum, and you'll see it's a 5-tone flute, and that's some say that's a Southern Ute or the Southern style. All the other ones, most of the ones also have 6 holes. And so, interestingly enough, they have 6 holes, but either you put a covering on the hole or you hold down that note. I can show you in a little bit on the other flutes. I like the 5 holes. Since I started on this, these are my favorite. And because it's a natural pentatonic scale, like it says, the same, there's no wrong notes. And that's the same thing as the blues scale, interestingly enough, where the African and the indigenous share the same scale, the Americans and the Africans. Like that. So this became the flute that I was I just had one, all I needed, right? And most players don't have a lot of flutes until recently. You would have your flute, and that would be it. You make your own. So that was the one I had for a while. And I didn't really get another one until maybe 10 years later when I was teaching at a music camp in Florida, and they had people teaching how to make these flutes. And so I decided to take the class. First, he also taught Sakim. He was Sakim Randall, Seminole. And he would teach how to play the flute and how to make your flutes. And so I was teaching at the camp, but I decided to take the class with him, and I took my flute.
Seminole of the Florida.
Yes. And he's one of the head medicine people, healers, musicians, just very important. And he taught how to make flutes and how to play them. And so I decided to take his class. And he says, well, you're a musician, so you know, and you've been playing the flutes. So he says, I'll let you in the class, but you have to listen to all my stories. He says, because I could teach you how to play in 5 minutes, but I'm going to make you listen to my stories. And he had all these wonderful stories about the flute, and how flutes that are made from cedar are more pleasing to the Creator. And in the spiritual sense, he was very spiritually oriented. And so at the end of that year, I already had this one, and they had made one in their class. This beautiful instrument. See, it's a sisal. And so this is the one I bought at the end of the semester. And since no one else had played it, it could be my flute. So I bought it directly from them. So my second flute. So the next year I said, okay, now I've learned how to play them, I got to make. So I went back to the camp, and he and Robin Tillery, the other teacher there from Alabama, I think Crow and I forget, but Robin was from Alabama, and they taught me how to make my own flute. So this is a flute, and they brought it from a Georgia cedar that he said it was over 1,000 years old, that had fallen, and they collected this, and he thought of me. So he brought me this piece, the wood, and taught me how to make it. So this is the one that I made. And it's interesting to me because they say when you make it your own flute, that's when you really know. And there's something really special about this tone for me. So that's what I was doing. This was now 2000 maybe, like that. And that's what I had going on in terms of flutes, and they were just very personal. I was playing them. I wasn't teaching about the flutes or the music or anything. It was just something that I was collecting for myself. And then the Alambrista experience came. That was wound up doing the soundtrack, and that one was, I was playing the Half Moon Bay Pumpkin Festival, and I was there early, and I was walking around, and there was this guy Peruano, Luis, I forget what his last name now, but Luis had these flutes, these instruments, like these ocarinas. like this, of different sizes. And he was Peruano, from Peru. And so...
This brought you to Alambristas, which was around
Well, so I
2005,
said, how much is that one? He said, again, man, that's 100, that's 200. I said, damn, man, no wonder you're not selling anything. He said, no. He said, these are instruments, they're not toys. I said, but they're, wow. So he says to me, I said, how much is that one? Which was this one. How much is that one? He says, no, you can have it for $50. Man, but he says, no, but it's an instrument. It's a real instrument. Just play it. And I said, I'm going to buy it for my daughter.
It's just two pieces you put together.
Well, I can't play now because it broke.
Oh.
I had it.
I thought that was the
I
way
had it. I
it
used to play with it. I used to play with it.
A ver,
But
atínale.
it doesn't play. No, because it's...
Oh, it
Yeah,
doesn't.
it doesn't hold
Oh,
it. Yeah,
I see.
you gotta-
Okay, wow.
Yeah, so I get it. I said, no, man, this is an instrument. I'm not going to give it to my daughter. I'm going to keep it. So I kept playing it. And when I went to do the soundtrack, I tried playing that little melody, doo-doo-doo, boo-doo-doo, on everything. And I tried it on this one, and this is what worked. So this is what I used to tell the director, look, this is what I want to do for the soundtrack. And this is the ocarina that I use for the soundtrack. And we used it and we recorded the soundtrack in 2001. The Dia de los Muertos after 9/11. We finished at the end of September after 9/11. I went to do a concert at Reading High School. And I said, I'm going to play this for all the dead. And when I went to take it off, it fell and broke in two. That was the end of the Alambrista ocarina that I keep. I haven't put it together just because it was interesting that it stayed with me until, it's still with me, but it was an instrument until that Days of the Dead after 9/11, and then after that.
Well, let me know when
So I replaced it with this one.
I got some monster glue for it if you need it.
Yeah, and I replaced it with this one. This is back at the Stanford powwow, and this other guy brought me this, had a bunch of them, and I said, I was looking around. He said, hey, and he had this one. He had all of these flutes.
Which Stanford?
It's Stanford powwow.
87?
No, this is now about 2000 and because I had already broke that other one. So maybe 2004, something like that. Yeah, so 2004. It's about 2004, and I'm walking around looking at all his. He's got all these beautiful flutes, and over in the corner was this little one, just one ocarina here in the corner. So I said, "Hey, man, are you saving that for someone?" Because I said, "I'm looking for one." He says, "Yes, for you." So I play it and I pick it up, and sure enough, it's 5 holes, not 6, just like I prefer. So I replaced the other one with this one. Different maker. This guy's a Mexicano from Jalisco. The other guy was a Peruano from Lima, maybe. And yet, a similarity in aesthetics, a similarity in instrument making, a similarity in the kinds of sounds that the instruments they produce, but they're not exact. Everything is unique and individual, as you can see. The tremendous variety you will find. The further north, the more variety, so that when you get to the central, what is now Mesoamerica, Costa Rica, Nicaragua, El Salvador, Honduras, and then the Veracruz, Cancun, Oaxaca, up there's Colima, Central Mexico, the West Coast, all of this tremendous variety in the iconography, the symbols, and the most amazing thing that I find among all of this that's impressed me the most is the tremendous variety and what I've come to interpret as an appreciation for diversity, an appreciation for uniqueness, an appreciation for distinction, no matter how minor or how small, to make differences, which is one of the characteristics that have been attributed to people from the South, people from Mesoamerica in particular, and South. And we see less of that, although the individuality in the North American, these are made in the past, probably before the 1960s. In North America, everyone made their own. It's only been the technology to work with wood that's happened, the saws, the grinders, etc., that have allowed more refined instruments in the North that begin to compare to the refined sounds and instruments we find in the South. And the interesting thing is that these instruments that we call ocarinas, that are a flute, but it's a globular kind of flute, a round flute. This is the sound of the spheres. That's a sphere. The ocarina that I just played for you is a sphere. I blow the air goes in, it goes around, and then it comes out. It doesn't happen like these flutes that I blow in, the air goes out. The ocarina,
It tumbles in.
blow in here, and it goes around, and only comes out when you let it out. And if you let it out one side or the other, if the whole is equal, then the sound is equal. So, like that. So we begin to see it's a really unique, distinct, and incredibly involved and developed in what is now what we call Mesoamerica, from central Mexico all the way to southern Costa Rica. The greatest, I argue and hypothesize and propose theoretically, that we find the greatest development, the greatest evolution, the greatest variety, which is a sign of development when you have a great variety of, when you only have one kind of lowrider, well, when you have all kinds of lowriders, then you see, oh wow, it's well developed. Same thing here. We see this tremendous variety. We see it's an old tradition that is practiced by many people and that has tremendous, tremendous distinction and representation. So it's very interesting. I got into this after I did that Alambrista ocarina. I went and played them at Harvard, played my flutes, did a lecture where I played the flutes. And they invited me to go to the museum there and to record there and research their holdings. So that's what I did 10 years ago. I went to Harvard, and I hadn't collected any of these. I had just started to collect some of these North American style flutes, and then beginning 10 years ago, I started collecting the Central American, Mexican, and South American in as much of a variety as I could, selecting the samples just so that I could have a sample and a representation of each and every one of the different styles that I could find. So these are the world.
Yes.
These are the world flutes.
Okay.
These are examples of flutes from China, India, Asia, Africa, and these are like in here, or the styles developed, the flutes developed in the Andes, Chile, Peru, Bolivia.
Can you share with us,
Sure.
if you may, Dr. Cuellar, some of the international or the instruments that you have over here? Just
Sure.
briefly, and then later we'll talk about the ceramics that you additionally have in their different forms from the different regions. But this international
Well, one of the
place
things
for your instruments.
one of the things that becomes apparent is no matter how well evolved it is elsewhere, the North Americans, when you include both United States and Mexican indigenous people, have the greatest variety and evolution of flutes that we find. Even although it's a different approach. But in many places we have, these are like prehistoric. This is the way the flutes were made, Neanderthal times, etc.
Sure.
Very primitive, quotes, not very well developed, very well sound. And so we have from this
The ability
also to the metal flutes and to great variety. Then we have India, have same we can develop where we find these double twin flutes like we find in the Americas. Like that. And so we have a variety of those. But without going through each one of those samples and examples, whatever we find elsewhere in the world, without sounding geocentric or egocentric, we have better ones in the Americas. We set the American flute makers, both United States, North American Indian, Mexican Indian, South American, Central American Indian, have significantly developed various aspects of this so that they're imitated. We have flutes from India, we have flutes from China that imitate the North American, that imitate the Mesoamerican, that imitate the South American. They're knockoffs. But they're in the style of, as opposed to in their own style. And one of the really beautiful ones that I like to demonstrate is this one. I mean, I hope the person who made this is still well. This was made by a Ukrainian in Ukraine. I got it online. This is an online, North American Indian style, obviously, but with the carved feathers. With the 5 holes. And they put remember I told you, some will put a little thing to cover the 6 holes, so that way you don't have to cover it. So that's what they did, and they glued it. So they put the hole, but then they cover it. And so it's like this, 2 mouthpieces. Ukrainian.
Sounds like to Ukrainian.
So the point is,
And the
Begin to
flute has
really
its
focus on North
origins in
American.
that region. And the flute has its origins in that region.
the flute as an instrument seems to have been evolved. Every place in the world has its variation of flutes. And even prehistoric, Neanderthal, we find flutes from bones carved of reeds as we
But
find.
it's not uncommon that you would find it in other regions as well. Huh?
Yes, the difference is in the other regions they're not well developed, as well developed as we find in the Americas, throughout the Americas. It's interesting as such, but we find this is uniquely American and the style. This was not made, the North American style is not made anywhere else. And part of what covers the North American is this aspect that you blow into it and air comes out and is redirected. Nowhere else in the world, except among North Americans. North of the Rio Grande is this style used. And everywhere in the North America is this style used. Pretty amazing.
Yeah. I wonder what intrigued them to look for that sound.
Was it to make it easier to play? I mean, it allows you then to not to have to, you can just blow. Because it's directing the air. I'm not having to direct it the way I was struggling. Remember when I was struggling over there? This, I don't have to go. I blow here and it directs the air to where it should go. And then you just adjust here. Unique. Not found anywhere else in the world. North Americans. And developed really since the 1800s. We see this evolution of this North American evolution of flutes goes all the way back. And then there's one that I found that's really wonderful. Because this is a century plant stem with holes, kind of like the one that I showed you, the African, the Egyptian, but with a different. This is 8 holes.
8 holes. Oh, that's what I was counting. How many holes?
8 holes.
Yeah.
And instead of carving it and directing it, you put a clay like the ones from Latin America, like the ones from Mesoamerica. So it puts the clay and combines the two styles, the border, the south and the north, and it creates this borderlands. So this, by its quiet nature, we suspect and we hypothesize, we think this was a meditative flute. It wasn't made to perform for you. It was made for me to concentrate on the sound and meditate on the breathing and the sound and how the sound is happening and the moving of fingers, but not so somebody else can appreciate it, but just for self-reflection. And we find a number of these. And then we find these others made like in the old traditional style. This is by a Gemes Pueblo artist, just tremendous flute maker. I love this one. Oops. See? Adjust.
Gemes Nuevo Mexico?
Huh?
Nuevo Mexico?
Yes. Gemes Nuevo Mexico. This is a DNA flute maker, Thompson. Well, he actually writes Navajo. And John Thompson. And he makes these beautiful little instruments. Soft wood, beautiful sound, very simple. And he has different fetishes, buffalo, eagle, and I kept the wolf for myself. Let me adjust, sorry. Mm-hmm. Bright sound, little flute, and very, very economical. He asked $50 for this thing, so it's very, very nice. This one, Tony, is very special because this was made by guys, lifers in the pen. When I went with Nane Alejandres, we went to Vacaville to the And we used
State
to go,
prison.
yeah, we used to go give lessons, talk. And so I went there, and before I went to Harvard, I told them I was going to be going to Harvard to do this research project on the flutes. And they got permission from the authorities, from the warden, to get this piece of wood, and they made this flute for me. So you see it says right there, SCBU, Santa Cruz Barrios Unidos. And they gifted it to me the December before I went, 2012, before I went to Harvard. They said, so you can sing for us and play the music. And it has this melancholy sound to it that really reminds me of the lifers. So, well, that was almost Amazing Grace, huh? Almost Amazing Grace. That's a trip. I never know what's going to play, what's going to come out. So that's sometimes the trip that I have to go, oh, wow, where did that one come from? And I have these others that I've obtained here. I think this I rescued from a pawn shop in Oklahoma. Seminole. Liberated. Yeah, this is Jerry Haney, Chief, Seminole Nation.
Yeah, that's something.
And he made this beautiful.
And there's plenty of alligators down there, huh?
Look at even with the teeth he put in.
In detail.
In great detail. The
It might even float.
Maybe, I'm sure. Nice, huh?
Yeah, it's got a good blast.
So, like that, different ones. Like this was made for me by a guy who calls himself Cousin. Cousin, what? Something Cousins. And he made this one for me. I called him, he was in Colorado. And I asked him if he would make me a flute, because he had been recommended. And so he said, yes. He said, but I don't have any wood right now. He said, I have to wait for, tell me a little bit about yourself. So I told him what I was doing, how I came to this. And he says, okay, I got the idea. He says, the wood will come to me. He says, once I start thinking about the person, the wood for that person will come. He says, I don't know how long
Really,
it's going to take.
more than that, it's the tree.
He says, yeah, he says, I don't know how long it's going to take. Who knows? He says, but, I'll let you know. It was about 7 months or 8 months. I had already forgotten that I had talked to him, but he called and says, I think I got your wood. And she said, I'm going to do something special. And this special is that it has 2 sets of holes in this way, which is unique. Most of them are drones. So you only have 1 set of holes. Like, this is made by Ray Wood, the guy who recommended him. He said, this guy's my teacher, Cousin's my teacher. Cruising Cousin, I think he called himself, something like that. And Ray Wood made this one, and it's a drone, but it's beautiful, Florida wood.
6 fingers.
Hear 3 notes, 2 holes, 1 set, and 3 notes will emerge. Just moving it around. So those are the things that are really interesting by these flute makers. they built these things into these flutes in a really curious way, an interesting way, an experimental way. So he said this lent itself to this. He said he didn't have any idea, but once he got the wood, he knew how to carve it. So, and then some of these are.
Did you give us a blast of that one, was that?
This one?
Yeah.
Didn't I just do this? Bright. Pretty bright sound. So, yeah. And then some of these others I got from different artists. This I got on the internet also. Long Rider, East Coast. And yeah, it's each one is very unique by different artists for different purposes. This I like because this is the only one that I've seen that is almost like a shotgun, but instead of like this, it's a dual flute, but played this way instead of played normal the way one would think. But it's great sound.
Whoa.
Like that. So, right? So each one of these, this is, Nakane, or Natwa. I think she's from, I think this is elderberry, I think. I like the aesthetics of this one, though. This is a real branch.
Yeah.
It wasn't.
Knots on it, everything.
Yeah. And then this lady made these. And I've never seen one with a bell. So I had to get this. It's got a great sound.
Oh, what do you make of that? Good sound, but is a bell or
Yeah, just carved. She
set
decided to add it. She made this one too. Same style, but notice how she put this extra little hump there. So she's like, it seems like an experimental.
like a trumpet, Indian trumpet or something.
Let's see, where are we here? That's as bright as this one goes. The other one is much brighter. Seems almost like the same kind of wood, maybe. Different finish, but same artist. What happened? Why does one sound one way? And it's amazing. The energy of the flutes. I like this one. So,
Nice.
those are the flutes. Oh, this last one. Just to point out, this is made by a prisoner in San Diego. He was in prison in San Diego. But this is made North American style, right? Because it has this. But it has this that is Mexican style. Only North Americans never put a back hole. So this is another border one like this one. Combines the two. South and north into a borderlands. The same thing with this person. And I have a ceramic one over there made by a Dine, but it's made out of ceramic. The only one that I've been able to find that's a flute like this, but made Mexican style in ceramics, but decorated with North American Dine iconography.
What's the difference on the sound with that added?
It's
Is it used?
It's used and
It doesn't have to be.
it doesn't necessarily. I don't think the sound, the differences are that significant. It's kind of like I don't hear much of a difference between the modern materials like the PCB pipes and an instrument like this made out of nice wood. It shows it's really kind of the air that you put into it because there's not much to the instrument. What is there? The conduction of the air and the allowing the air to come out at different stages, different sizes to produce different sounds. So that's the simplicity and the beauty of this musical instrument. There's not much to it. But what it produces and what we get out of it and what is done in terms of the evolution of societies and the significance and the role it plays and, as a gift article, as an object of art, and as a musical instrument. So all of that was what I was really interested in. And so when they gave me this fellowship at Harvard, I was really going to focus my attention on North American flutes. But when I got there, they said, sorry, professor, but all of the organic flutes, all of the organic instruments were treated with arsenic and other pesticides, but at the time they thought they were preservatives. And they would preserve these artifacts, so they treated everything organic with these. Breastplates, headdresses, feathers, and instruments. And so as after 78, when they began to repatriate instruments from the museum, these objects that these indigenous groups, tribes, etc., were reclaiming, people started getting sick. And it was like the smallpox all over again. What's coming? What are you giving us that's making us sick? And they found out it was the pesticides and these artifacts that have been used at the museum as preservatives, unknowingly that it was going to be worse than that. So they said, unfortunately, therefore, you can't record our North American flutes. You can't research them. You can't touch them. But we have all these Central American flutes that have never been touched or studied or anything, and you could study them. So I was already there. I said, okay, I'll do that. And I had already had the experience with that one or two little carinas, Mm-hmm. So I began to say, okay, well, I'll pay even more attention. I know there were instruments, but I'll pay even more attention. So what we could do is, for part 2, we can come back and talk about the ceramic instruments.
Yes, and before we do, I just want to say that you playing the instruments, the different sounds, and the different areas, it's so nice, and the quality is so nice. And you also make it look so easy. And I know it's not very easy, blowing easy, these flutes.
These are meant to
it takes a lot of wind.
No, these are meant to play by everybody. And they're not meant necessarily to be played loud. These are not necessarily for public consumption. They were very individual. They said, that the Lakota had these tales that the young braves would go and take their love flute and go someplace and play the love flute, and their loved one inside the village or could hear and would know. and that all the different braves had their own way of young men had their own way of playing the flute, so the different girlfriends would hear the actual differences in the tones. But that was not meant to be. It was just meant to be quiet and meditative. And so that's the difference when we get up to these smaller ones. They're really meant for the parades, for thousands of people to be playing them at the same time. They have neck pieces. These are hung on the neck. They're kind of like the eagle whistles. They're very special. They're ritual, and they're meant to be loud. And that's the difference. I have a couple of, when we do the inorganic, some eagle whistles that have been made out of ceramic to look like eagle bone, but they're not. They're made of ceramics, or they're made of. I have a couple of organic, I think over here, that are bone instruments made of turkey instead of eagle. So. Like that requires a lot more attention than I've been giving it. So, I haven't played this for a long time, and it's such a challenge that. Hey man, well,
I don't think we recorded this one, but
time
it's
for
all
a
right.
mota break.
Oh, my relatives. And on that note, I want to thank Dr. Jose Cuellar, aka Dr. Loco, for allowing us to come into his house, into his studio, and share with us this marvelous display of flutes, an array that still needs further discussion. But stay with us. Next time we're going to be talking about the flutes that he has that are of ceramic nature and symbols, and we'll have further discussion on that. So once again, thank you for watching Eagle and Condor.